Fighting Nerds is a team of Brazilian MMA geeks who are currently dominating everyone in the UFC. With combined 42 wins and not a single loss on their record, this rapid takeover has even shocked doubleweight champion Alex Pereira and Brazil's top influencer, Whindersson Nunes. Everyone wants to be part of this team, from the greatest fighter of all time, Jon Jones, to an average fight fan. But what makes them so special? And how do they manage to win, thanks to their nerd glasses? To understand this, we need to start with their coach. The story of the team began with their current head coach, Pablo Sucupira. Sucupira has a base in boxing and Muay Thai. His professional boxing record is 5-0. He recounts that after his fifth fight, there was another bout in which he was knocked out. This led Sucupira to rethink his desire to be a fighter, and he decided to focus on coaching.
When I moved to a trainer, I saw that the path in boxing, Muay Thai in Brazil was too hard. And I realized that in MMA we could do bigger things, especially when I met Caio Borralho.
In 2014, a promising young grappler named Caio Borralho reached out to him.
When he arrived in the team, it was really raw yet, and I started to work with him. I always had a different vision of the fight, and he was one of the guys that truly believed in myself and my vision. We started training. It was like, oh, we're just gonna do some drilling, put the gloves, put the mouthpiece, and then we're just gonna do some drilling. And then, like 2 minutes doing drilling, he was like, okay, now I'm gonna spar. It's like, what the fuck, I'm not gonna hurt him my first day, I was thinking that on my mind, And man, that was the biggest ass beat that I have ever got into my life.
From then on, Borralho realized that this was the coach he needed to reach the peak of MMA. According to the nerds, Caio brought a mathematical approach to the team, as he used to teach math and chemistry.
I was always a nerd, When I was young, I was math teacher, I was chemistry teacher. I really loved chemistry, so working in some labs, I always like anime, chess, all this nerdy stuff, When I came into fighting, I just transferred all my skills as a nerd, the way I approach the numbers and the data and all this stuff, and then I put it into the fighting, So when it comes about fighting, I'm just looking about movement, mechanics, statistics.
Gradually, people from different walks of life joined the team. Many of them had experienced bullying issues in school. Now, the team is united by the fact that they're all slightly quirky guys.
We used to call the combat club team. In the school, I had some issues. I was bullied in school, and Caio was a nerd. And some of our athletes also had the same issues. So we figured out, man, we are kind of nerds, And the way you study fights, and I always use my notebook, and we are kind of nerds, but we are fighting nerds, I made the brand, I made the logo, and the rest is history.
Many have hobbies typical for geeks, like anime, chess, or D&D. They declare that there's no need to be a bully or act like an alpha male to win fights. They also claim that they win through careful analysis of their opponents and an intellectual approach to training. This approach works very well. The Fighting Nerds currently hold first place in terms of wins and losses, with the main athletes among the Fighting Nerds holding an impressive 42-0 record. To get a better understanding of their fighting styles and what led to this huge undefeated streak, let's dive into each of them individually, starting with the lightest nerd of them all.
Jean Silva.
In the featherweight division, Jean Silva, also known as Lord, represents the Fighting Nerds team. If Lord sounds too grandiose, remember that his original nickname was Lord Assassin. Jean Silva was born on December 13th, 1996, in Florianópolis, Brazil. It's hard to believe now, but Silva was obese as a child, which affected his mobility. Kids often laughed at him, which affected his social skills. Maybe that's why he likes to bark at the camera now. But at the time, it was bullying that motivated him to take up sports. The UFC featherweight began his training in 2009, around the age of 13. As a teen, he loved street fighting, which led him to pursue fighting seriously. Before his professional career, Jean worked as a delivery driver. Though he usually fights at 145 pounds, he's also fought at 155 and made his professional debut in Spara FC, a Brazilian regional promotion, on November 19, 2016, just before his 20th birthday. Jean started his career with a 3-2 record, after which he went on a long win streak. Unfortunately, there are no records of all his victories, but I will show you what remains. He started by finishing Martins dos Santos. After that, Tamaré Lacerda was the next victim. And perhaps Jean's most spectacular victory was Valdemir Cardoso. Silva's arsenal includes not only knockouts, but also guillotine choke, although he has only used those outside of the UFC. For instance, one opponent attempted a takedown only to fall right into Silva's choke. Another fight saw a high-amplitude throw that led to victory within a minute. This incredible streak landed Silva a spot in Dana White's Contender Series in September 2023. Though it marked the end of his KO streak, Silva still won the fight by decision against Kevin Vallejos, earning a UFC contract. In his UFC debut, Jean Silva faced Weston Wilson. Lord immediately rocked Wilson with a powerful lead hook, scoring a knockdown with a perfectly timed, precise, and impactful punch. Just a minute and a half later, Wilson was floored again by a strong 1-2 combination. Silva kept a methodical pace, delivering heavy shots without rushing into a reckless finish. After the fight, he barked into the camera like a wild animal. Silva's next opponent was Charles Jourdain, a Canadian fighter who dog-walked, last representative of the legendary Gracie family. Silva, however, missed weight by a couple of pounds, so he subsequently moved up a weight class. The Brazilian clearly enjoys being in the octagon, hugging announcer Bruce Buffer when his name was called, and he exudes confidence and calmness. Lord started the fight with a move right out of Mortal Kombat, something several members of the Fighting Nerds team enjoy doing. When Jourdain missed a high kick, Silva responded with 2 enthusiastic high fives, clearly enjoying himself. Still, you could feel Silva's intensity building. The moment came when he caught the Canadian with a powerful left hook while moving forward, and if Silva lands a punch, people drop. Jourdain managed to weather the storm and survive the round. In the second, Jourdain tried to slow down the Brazilian Hulk, but on his way out of a clinch, he took an uppercut so powerful that no follow-up was necessary. Silva simply stood and looked down at his fallen opponent. With each fight and higher-level opponent, the time it took Silva to finish them increased. His next challenge was Drew Dober, a lightweight division veteran known for his granite chin and heavy hands. Dober, famous for his strange tendency to defeat black fighters and lose to white ones, found himself facing Silva, whose light complexion seemed to fit the trend. In the first round, Silva bloodied Dober and outstruck him. Near the end of the second, only the bell saved Dober from a knockout. He had already taken a spinning elbow that sent him to the canvas, followed by another from the opposite direction. Silva gestured to Herb Dean to check on Dober's massive cut, but Dean and the ringside doctor signaled that it wasn't his job. Silva, however, knew exactly what his job was. He targeted the cut again, and this time, the referee's patience with the carnage wore out. The doctor stopped the fight without hesitation. Just from this introduction to the Fighting Nerds' first member, it's clear that they represent a new generation of fighters. With high-level grappling and knockout power, the best representative of this hybrid style might be Ilia Topuria. What once seemed like Topuria's unique approach now appears to be the defining style of MMA's new wave.
Mauricio Ruffy.
Let's move up a weight class, where Mauricio Ruffy represents the Fighting Nerds with a record of 10-1 and the fitting nickname, One Shot. Throughout his career, he's also worked as a bodyguard for a millionaire, and every single one of his wins has come by knockout. So, let's watch every knockout, because trust me, you don't want to miss them. Mauricio Ruffy started his career with a knockout victory over Marlon Paula de Souza. His second win, and another knockout, came against Wenson Santos. He kept the momentum going with an impressive KO of Lucas Costa Jesus.
Luiz, Mauricio Ruffy, o atleta da China Team, trabalha duramente o ground and pound e o juiz vai separar. O juiz vai separar.
Vai continuando na sequência. Mauricio Ruffy.
Solidifying his reputation. Ruffy then went on to face Rafael Silva, securing yet another knockout.
Você viu ali, sentiu, veio pra lona, Mauricio Ruffy.
Next up was Darlin Mourinho, who also fell victim to Ruffy's power.
Muito veloz, muito preciso. Caiu novamente. Fim de papo.
E que fim de luta! Mauricio Ruffy.
Breno Luiz Goncalves Silva joining the list of opponents knocked out by Ruffy. As he continued his climb, Corneliu Lascar Rotaru was added to the lineup of KO victims. And finally, Ronis Torres was taken down with Ruffy's relentless force, rounding off an incredible streak. Only once has an opponent managed to survive until the third round against him. That was during a pivotal fight in his career, where One Shot earned a ticket to the fastest social lift in the industry, Contender Series. His opponent was a Russian with the distinctly Russian name Raymond Magomed Aliyev, a Kung Fu world champion. Both fighters were noticeably tense, especially Raymond, who showed it through wild, unprotected spinning attacks. Mauricio was clearly more cautious than usual. One defensive technique to note here. Ruffy has no fear of turning his head away from a long punch, nearly looking back over his shoulder. This move goes against any MMA or boxing textbook, yet it works for him. His reaction blocks are also impressively sharp. Early in the final round, Magomed Aliyev could barely step on his left leg after Ruffy relentlessly attacked it with calf kicks. With Raymond's movement impaired, One Shot began landing devastating single shots on his opponent. When the Russian fell awkwardly and tried to grapple to save himself, Mauricio pounded him in the ground game, forcing the referee to stop the beating just 15 seconds before the final bell. Ruffy's powerful strikes, interesting defensive approach, varied arsenal, and intent to knock out with each move, not just each punch, all stand out. For his UFC debut against Jamie Mullarkey, One Shot entered the octagon looking more relaxed. Right off the bat, he threw a move straight out of Tekken and followed up with more of his signature heavy targeted leg kicks. Ruffy's trademark move of turning his head back showed up again, deflecting hits so the impact bypasses his brain and is absorbed by his neck muscles. He even pulled out a shoulder roll. At first glance, it might seem easy to categorize Mauricio as an entertaining but ultimately typical striker. However, his performance continued with a slick scissor takedown, making me rethink that classification. Mauricio Ruffy appears to be a blend of young Conor McGregor's precision and the wild, unorthodox techniques of prime Tony Ferguson. He might just be the ideal lightweight fighter. After a knockout victory over Jamie Mullarkey, next in line was James Lontop, the only Peruvian fighter in the lightweight division and the only fighter in lightweight history to miss the 155-pound limit. Lontop requested a catchweight bout at 165 pounds and still missed weight, entering the fight looking more like a welterweight. But this wasn't a problem for Ruffy. He picked apart Lontop as he pleased, even showcasing a new move, a spinning head uppercut. The creative beatdown lasted 2 rounds, but by the third, it became clear that Lontop had deliberately missed weight to use his size advantage against Ruffy. Although he couldn't defeat Mauricio, Lontop did manage to end Ruffy's 100% knockout streak. This fight remains the only decision victory on Ruffy's record to date. How far do you think he can climb the rankings in this most competitive of divisions?
Carlos Prates.
In the welterweight division, representing the fighting nerds, we have a man with a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a Muay Thai tattoo on his chest. Known for his pre-fight drinking and post-fight smoking, and maybe even during the fight if he could, Carlos Prates is the bad boy of the fighting nerds.
Yeah, bro, I think I smoke since my 15 years old. I have more time living smoking than without smoking. So for me, it's normal. I smoke before the fight, on the day of the fight, and you know, it's normal. So now we're here in Louisville, so I trying to go drink some whiskey because here is capital of whiskey and I really like whiskey.
He started his MMA career sluggishly, but once he got serious, he went on a 10-fight winning streak, with 9 of those wins coming by finish.
Entrou direita, sentiu! Entrou direita, sentiu! Vai terminar!
Carlos proves his skills both on the ground and on his feet. He has a sharp sense for guard control and has mastered timing for sweeps. For instance, he waited until Ramirez applied pressure from a direction that allowed Carlos to straighten his neck, brace on it, and gain the mobility needed for a sweep. Once back on his feet, Prates continued breaking down his opponent with powerful single shots. In the second round, he didn't waste time. A single cross punch sent Ramirez into another dimension. Just like that, Carlos scored a casual one-punch knockout, as if this were a street fight, not a match for a UFC contract. Naturally, he earned that contract with Trevin Giles as his first opponent. Giles opened with low kicks and front kick. Carlos Prates wisely switched to his native Muay Thai stance, almost balancing on one leg. That's about all there was to note from the first round. Carlos was able to adjust mid-fight, finding a comfortable stance and range. In the next round, the Brazilian picked up the pace, forcing Giles to attempt a grappling escape. Then, with a minute left, Prates landed a precise left cross, ending the fight. Next, the fighting nerd faced off against American Charlie Ratka. The first notable action was a clinch against the cage initiated by Ratka. Charlie managed to put some pressure on Carlos, but failed to get him to the canvas. Later in the round, Ratka went for another takedown, but Carlos expertly defended. Ratka dove for a single leg, but Carlos slipped a hand under his chin and pulled his head away, preventing him from completing the move. And in truth, grappling was the American's last chance because without it, the fight reverted to a Muay Thai showdown. The fight ended in classic Muay Thai fashion. Carlos threatened with his signature left cross. Ratke had done his homework. He knew he couldn't afford to let that shot land, so he kept his right hand high. This left his liver exposed to the knee strike from the Muay Thai-trained Carlos, then finished with a body knockout. Aside from Israel Adesanya, UFC fans are also familiar with another native Chinese fighter, Li Jingliang. Known as the Leech, Jingliang has only ever been submitted by Khamzat Chimaev, and no one has managed to knock him out until he met the fighting nerds. It was a case of calculated domination. The first time Carlos landed his left, it might have seemed like Li just lost his balance. But by the second, then the third knockdown, any doubts were gone. Carlos's cool-headed approach kept him from rushing in recklessly for the finish. With a minute and a half left in the second round, Carlos once again dropped Jingliang with surgical precision, watching almost indifferently as he climbed back up, making no attempt to rush the finish. A minute before the round's end, Carlos delivered a knockout blow that switched off the lights for Jingliang. In this nightmare, Li probably saw his low social credit. After beating one veteran, Prates was offered another, a fight against the legendary gatekeeper Neil Magny. Only by defeating him does a fighter prove that he is of the elite level. That same year, Magny defeated the undefeated in the UFC Mike Mallet. Many expected that Magny would take Carlos down and exhaust him by the last rounds. But Carlos decided to ruin all of Magny's plans. He easily blocked takedown attempts, after which he dropped him and very quickly finished off Neil Magny, declaring himself to the entire welterweight division because he only touched Neil, causing him to fall to get knocked out. Do you think Carlos will be able to get to the title by knockouts? If that's not enough entertainment for you, then I'm not sure what would be. Though, actually, I know the main star of the fighting nerds.
Caio Borralho.
Representing the fighting nerds in the middleweight division and also the main star of the boys band is Caio Borralho. Simply put, he's what we imagined Paulo Costa to be.
I disapprove 100%.
A smart grappler with solid striking skills and knockout power. Caio Borralho was born in January 1993 in the small Brazilian town of São Luís. Unlike many Brazilian fighters who come from the poverty of the favelas and difficult childhoods, Borralho grew up in good conditions. At the age of 6, the hyperactive child was enrolled in a judo class. His mother heard good things about the local coach and thought it would be beneficial for her son. Caio's grandfather, a math teacher, also instilled in him a love for science. As a teenager, Caio was deeply interested in math and chemistry, but he carefully balanced his academic studies with sports. By 19, he had achieved significant success in judo, becoming a medalist and champion in various state and national competitions. Borralho even dreamed of becoming an Olympic champion. During one of his matches, his opponent put him in an armbar, resulting in a disappointing loss. His sensei then advised him to incorporate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu into his training schedule. Around that time, Borralho discovered pride in UFC tournaments, where his compatriots were shining. He decided he wanted to do the same, so he took up Muay Thai, had a couple of kickboxing matches, and at 21 made his professional MMA debut with only one amateur fight under his belt. From then on, his priorities were set. He left a prestigious university to fully focus on his fighting career. To advance his skills, Caio moved from his hometown of São Luís to the larger and more developed São Paulo, and soon after, he and his coach founded the Fighting Nerds team.
I moved to São Paulo in 2014. When I was like training 2 months there in São Paulo, I met a guy, his name is Bruno Murata, that used to train with Pablo. He came to me and he said like, so you wanna train striking, if you know your striking game and stuff, because I'm only seeing you training grappling. I was like, yeah, I wanna train. So okay, I'm gonna pass you this address and I see you there on Tuesday. Okay, and then I came to the gym. We used to call the combat club team. In the school, I had some issues. I was bullied in school, and Caio was a nerd, and some of our athletes also had the same issues. So we figured out, man, we are kind of nerds, you know, but we are fighting nerds, you know. I made the brand, I made the logo, and the rest is history.
Borralho has said that transitioning to MMA helped him overcome childhood fears and insecurities. As a kid, whenever he found himself in a conflict that might lead to a fight, he would always run away. He was deeply afraid of any confrontation. Even when playing in the street with other kids, if someone picked on him, he would always back down. Caio grew up with this fear in his mind, so he needed to prove something to himself. Today, Caio Borralho fights the best fighters in the world and kicks their butts. Borralho began his professional journey in local Brazilian promotions. After his debut, he lost by decision, but he quickly returned to winning ways by finishing his opponent. He then knocked out Luis Carlos Alves. Next, Douglas Nascimento finished. But Caio can win not only by knockouts, he soon choked Luis Carlos Alves. After which, he choked Otávio Sagaz. After these wins, Caio was signed to Future FC, where he won twice by decision. The victory over Ícaro Queiroz gave Caio the opportunity to fight for the champion title in Future FC. Borralho adopted the personas of both McGregor and Diaz. After 2 cautious rounds, he turned up the intensity in the third. His opponent was also willing to pick up the pace, attempting several unsuccessful takedowns, but ultimately finding himself on his back. In the championship rounds, Caio landed some solid shots and scored a powerful takedown. Although his opponent tried to rally at the end, it didn't affect the outcome. Caio Borralho claimed victory by unanimous decision, winning his first championship belt at 27. The young, dangerous prospect caught the attention of the matchmakers in the world's top league. He was invited to Dana White's Contender Series, where he faced Canadian Aaron Jeffrey. Borralho won by decision, but the league executives weren't ready to offer him a contract just yet.
Caio was an underdog, and he won like consistently. He won like the three rounds, and we were sure that Dana would sign us up, you know. But when he said, "No, I'm not signing you guys," and Caio went to me and said, "Pablo, I'm not coming back." "How's that, Caio? I have to come back." I said, "No, I'm not coming back. I'm just coming back with the contract." "See, but what are you gonna do?" "I don't know. I'm gonna train here. I'm gonna do something." And we sent a message to McMahon saying, "Caio's not coming back. He's gonna stay in Vegas. So if there's any spot, any fight, there's any problem, he's there." And McMahon said, "Oh, awesome. Just that." And the other coaches went back to Brazil, and just he and Caio stay here in the United States. And a few days after, McMahon called us and say, "We have a spot, but in light heavyweight, arena, offshore, of course." And in the second fight, we knew that we need to put on a show. And
3 weeks later, he participated in the show again, this time at light heavyweight, and Caio finished the fight early. Dana White awarded him a full contract without hesitation.
He put on a show, he got the contract, and after that, I think all the eyes were starting to look at us, and we had a lot of quality there in the gym.
6 months later, he made his debut on the world's main stage. The fighting nerd from Brazil faced another alum from the same Contender Series season, Dagestan's Gajimurad Amargadzhiev. During training for this fight, Caio worked extensively under the guidance of legendary fellow Brazilian and phenomenal jiu-jitsu artist Demian Maia. Eager to showcase his skills, he took the fight head-on. The undefeated Dagestani launched bombs in the stand-up and quickly went for takedowns. Borralho stunned the crowd with a quick sweep and dominated on the ground for the rest of the round. He started the second round with a jumping knee and a precise cross. Amargadzhiev couldn't keep his balance. When he got up, he tried to respond, but only put himself back in a disadvantageous position on the ground. Borralho then landed an illegal knee to the head. Amargadzhiev couldn't continue. 1 point was deducted from Borralho for the illegal move, but thanks to his 2 dominant rounds, Caio was declared the winner. His next opponent was Armenian Arman Petrosyan. Initially, they both worked in the stand-up, but Caio quickly showcased his grappling skills. After a minute of control, the Brazilian looked for a submission, but Petrosyan defended well, not allowing him to finish early. The second round was a repeat of the first. After a few exchanges in the stand-up, the fight went back to the mat, where Borralho looked as comfortable as an anaconda in the jungle. Halfway through, Petrosyan briefly returned to his feet, only to be taken down again. Only by the third round did Caio start to tire. His takedowns lost effectiveness, so the fighting nerd had to invent a new formula for victory. In the final minute of the match, the Brazilian once again held his ground, clinching to control the fight and secured another solid win by unanimous decision. After the fight, Caio said, "Arman's a killer, man. He's got 6 or 7 knockouts, but I'm not stupid. That's why we're fighting nerds. I calculated everything. Taking him to the ground was the right tactic. Dricus du Plessis, you're the one I'm coming after. Let's fight and see who deserves a place in the rankings. Dricus du Plessis, you're next." Caio expected that a victory over such a skilled opponent would get him closer to being ranked. But next, he was matched with Floyd Mayweather's favorite MMA fighter, Makhmud Muradov. From the very start, both fighters tried to knock each other's heads off. As per his usual approach, Borralho went for a takedown and controlled from the top. Muradov, however, was more prepared for this kind of fight than Caio's previous opponents. He didn't hesitate to grapple and turned the bout into a tight contest. In the second round, Makhmud went further, securing a takedown of his own. Caio countered with a guillotine and executed a sweep, showing it was risky to get too comfortable with him on the canvas. Though Caio couldn't complete the takedown himself, his opponent effectively helped him gain position. Relying on his guillotine more than Dustin Poirier, he won the positional battle. Muradov didn't have the strength to escape from under Caio's unrelenting pressure. Caio maintained top control until the end, taking the round and winning the fight. Returning from this heated Middle Eastern journey, Borralho accepted a fight with Polish knockout artist Michał Oleksiejczuk, and once again found himself in the co-main event of a non-numbered card. The fighting nerd immediately gauged his opponent's power and had to test his own durability. Caio sought safety in grappling, but his attempts failed. He then recalled his Muay Thai lessons and traded strikes in the stand-up. Near the end of the round, he found a moment for a takedown and secured his opponent's back, but couldn't finish before time ran out. During the break, Borralho surely calculated the shortest route to victory. He kept his opponent guessing, executed a successful takedown, dismantled his defense with elbows, took the back, and forced Oleksiejczuk to tap. After the fight, Caio said, "Let me tell you something. My double-leg takedown, you better be careful with it because it's the best in the UFC." Abus Magomedov, who only has one win in the league, headlined an entire event fighting Sean Strickland. What do I need to do to be the main event? If I move to Dagestan and get citizenship, can I fight for a title in my next match? Or maybe after 4 wins, Adesanya himself will just hand over the belt to me. Help me out here, guys. I'm a little confused. After this interview, by a twist of fate, Caio's next opponent was Abus Magomedov, who had lost to Strickland. The fighters met in Brazil, marking Borralho's first bout on home soil since joining the UFC. Previously, he fought in an empty Apex Center and on enemy territory in Abu Dhabi. Now, the crowd cheered him on and fueled his energy on fight day. The cautious first round was mostly a feeling-out process, marked only by Caio's unsuccessful takedown attempt. In the second round, the fighters fought more boldly. The Brazilian decided to forget about grappling for a moment and enjoy some stand-up. In the final segment, it only took seconds before the action heated up. Midway through, Caio landed an elbow that rattled Abus. Smelling blood, the Brazilian pursued the finish. Under heavy pressure, Magomedov broke, and Borralho took full advantage. Taking his back, Caio had a few words with his opponent. Though he couldn't secure a finish, the fighting nerd claimed another decision victory. Caio's next fight took place the following year at UFC 301, where he earned the chance to face seasoned veteran Paul Craig. The Scotsman is one of the UFC's top grapplers, so the fighting nerd calculated that he needed to strike, and this strategy paid off in the second round. When Caio won by knockout, his performance caught everyone's attention. Even prompting a challenge from top UFC middleweight Jared Cannonier. Cannonier may be the hardest-hitting middleweight in the roster, but Borralho calculated he could strike with him and avoid a knockout. That's precisely what happened, as Caio dominated the veteran, outstriking him in every aspect and delivering another thrilling performance for the fans. This brought him closer than ever to a title shot. Many of you often ask about the music playing in my videos, but the thing is, 99% of the time, I'm using an original soundtrack, specifically created for my videos. This means I can't simply give you a song name for you to find it. So, I've created a separate channel where I upload the entire original soundtracks. You'll find the link to the channel in the description and pinned comment. So, if you like any song in the video, just follow the link to the channel.
We're not just there to fight or just to pay check. No, we're there to put everything on the line, and we have a big message to inspire people. It's bullying payback time. Because the nerd guys is the guys that always get bullied a lot. So we're like, now it's bullying payback time. We're gonna inspire all these people too. We have a message behind everything. And imagine a guy that suffers bully all the time for being a nerd or for wearing glasses or anything like that, and he sees like big nerds fighting in the biggest stage of the world. Fighting the best guys in the world and beating their ass. Like it's really bullying payback. So that kind of inspires them, not just to fight, but just to be whoever they want, to know they have this powerful thing inside of them,
So, we now have 4 exciting prospects in different weight classes who are bulldozing through opponents, aiming to dominate the UFC with championship belts around their waists. The last time one training camp dominated across multiple weight divisions was at AKA, when Cain Velasquez, Daniel Cormier, Luke Rockhold, and Khabib Nurmagomedov held sway across 4 divisions. Do you think the fighting nerds can replicate this feat? Or are they a step below that class, providing fans with exciting fights rather than true domination?